This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you, Manny. Hey, you are back on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. I'm Downrigger Dale. Got our old friend Adam Strainer back again. He was on recently talking about Canyon Ferry Reservoir. And we've got him back on because, the captain who's joining me as well, we heard that the Kokanee salmon are looking pretty fine. We wanted to talk to him a little bit about that. In fact, we got a picture of Adam and his son out, and boy, that was looking good. Adam, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to talking about Kokanee and Holter and other things in Holter for a while.
Yeah. So, Captain, I'll let you jump in there. What's it looking like? You saw this picture. In fact, you sent me, you texted me the picture of Adam and his son with these kokanee. That kind of got us both excited because we haven't, caught kokanee on Holter in a long time.
Well, I've known Adam a long time, and one of the things that I was surprised when he said, you know what, Holter Reservoir is really a good salmon fishery right now. And I said, what are you talking about, Adam? And he goes, well, I'll send you a picture. My son and I were out fishing, caught a 4-pound Kokanee salmon. And I said, was that just a common, just a unique experience, or is it something that happens all the time? And maybe Adam can tell us how he actually fishes for those kokanee.
Oh, wouldn't you like to know?
Yes, we would.
No, this.
Yeah, we would.
This is great. Let me give you a little background, what we've been seeing recently, and then that led to some outings looking for kokanee. And so a few years ago, we were doing an electrofishing survey below Hauser, and in the fall, and we noticed some large schools of kokanee spawning right below the dam. And when I say large, I mean thousands of kokanee spawning right below the dam. And this harkens back to what I would consider the good old days when the folks used to actually come and look for eagles, harvesting all the kokanee spawning below our dams. But anyway, fast forward a year, and we were like, well, maybe we'll see some of these kokanee in the main reservoir. And we started picking up some really nice looking kokanee in our netting surveys. And so at that time, I started noticing a handful of folks targeting kokanee at traditional locations. And I started hearing the buzz that folks were keeping a couple of fish each outing. And so that piqued my interest to go dust off the old tackle box and really see if we could find them. And the first time out, my dad and I went, we were running basically Dodgers and Hoochies and using traditional shoe peg corn, all the stuff that I used as a kid growing up on Hauser Reservoir. And we found some nice, at that time, 16, 18-inch kokanee. And this would have been 2 years ago. And since then, I've started hearing reports of folks consistently finding them. And I'd say the last 3 years now, it's becoming well known that you can find kokanee in certain parts of the reservoir.
What's interesting to me, Adam, is that, let's do a little history here. Hauser, where the Kokanee salmon were just unbelievably good. In fact, at one time, Hauser was called the Kokanee Salmon capital of the world. And then all of a sudden, it was like in the late 90s, they went away. And FWP, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure you will, they quit stocking Hauser because it wasn't working. They weren't getting any results out of that stocking. Can you tell the folks a little bit about that and how that works?
Yeah, so there were a couple things happening around that time frame. And you're spot on in the time frame. About 2001 to 2004, basically the last big age class of kokanee left in Hauser sustained that fishery. And those were the years, I think in 2003, we broke the state record 5-6 times. We're talking kokanee and Hauser at that time over 7 pounds, which is, world-class kokanee fishing. And we think what happened, it was kind of a few things, walleye really came online in Canyon Ferry. There was consistent flushing of walleye into Holter Reservoir, which Hauser was stocked at one point with walleye. But we think what happened was, the forage-based depletion led walleye to maybe cropping off all those final attempts in the early 2000s. And we were kind of scratching our head as to what to do at that time. The fisheries biologists were trying everything. They were planting larger kokanee, smaller kokanee at different times of the year. And frankly, they were not recruiting to adulthood. And we were stuck with decisions about, well, do we move on and this is now a rainbow walleye perch fishery, or do we try to reestablish kokanee at that? And at that time, we decided to move away from kokanee in Hauser. And basically the same thing happened in Holter, except for in 2009, we did have some surplus fish that we tried in Holter, but in reality, they never recruited to adulthood. So in large part, both Hauser and Holter were not planted with kokanee up until 2020.
Okay, now Holter, you never used to plant the kokanee in Holter. You always just planted them in Hauser, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I do want to clarify one thing. I was kind of talking about both reservoirs. We still to date have not planted kokanee in recent times in Holter, but we did plant some surplus fish starting in 2020 in Hauser, and again in 22, and now again in 23.
Okay, so why do you think the kokanee are showing up in Holter when you haven't planted anything in there? I guess it goes back to they're coming up to try to spawn underneath or right below the Hauser Dam.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things going on here. So since 2011-12, we've had perch in incredible numbers in Holter Reservoir. And so I think that forage base in Holter for the more predaceous species have got walleye in particular back to eating what they normally would. Prior to 2011, they were pretty opportunistic, meaning they were kind of, targeting whatever was available in the system. And I think since we've had a reestablishment of perch and Holter, the kokanee that historically have spawned on their own in the system have gotten a foothold back in that population. And I think that in large part has led to the successful spawning and equating to recruiting of a large adults back in the population.
But the kokanee are only a 4-year fish, correct? I mean, they expire in 4 years. Like you said, they go up below the dam there at Hauser. Well, that means that, some of those are going to be gone. And that's where the eagles come in play.
Yeah, so typically we see if we get fish to 4.5 years old, that's a great kokanee life cycle. For example, another area of water body, the Helena Valley Regulating Reservoir, which still is fishing excellent for kokanee, those fish tend to age out at 2.5 years old. If we get 3.5-year-olds there, that's a big deal. But you're right. I mean, these big populations that are now spawning in Holter are likely relic fish that always, historically got a spawn off in some capacity. They were probably cropped off for like the last 15 years. And now that they've been able to reestablish, I think what we're seeing is, spawning efforts, successful spawning efforts occurring on an annual basis.
Okay. Adam, so why do you suppose that is? What changed in Holter that caused this population to start coming back? And I mean, we're seeing beautiful kokanee coming out of there.
Yeah, again, I think it was a combination of perch coming back online. One age class is all it takes. And that's what we hang our hat on for all of these species that we've been talking about, whether it be Candy Fairy, Hauser, or Holter. It just takes one good age class to get off a successful spawn. And then that hopefully leads to future successful spawning attempts. And in our netting surveys, we're not seeing, numbers like what we were seeing back in the 2000s, 2010. We're not seeing numbers like that. But what we are seeing is anglers successfully targeting and finding kokanee in traditional locations, and that has not been the case for like 15 years.
Okay, what is a traditional location on Holter for kokanee?
So
there we go.
So a lot of folks, basically start their journey for finding them down in the deeper parts of the lake. Down, I'll say, dam area. Kokanee are weird in the sense where if you get them figured out, you're going to be a millionaire. But the deeper water, I'd say 45 to as deep as 80 feet, especially during later in the season, is where folks are finding them. Typically, kokanee are found pretty shallow in the spring, early summer. But then by late summer, they're down at those crazy depths where there's very few folks that are even targeting them. Traditional anglers, and I know that you guys spend a lot of time on Holter targeting rainbows. That's what the bulk of the anglers have been for the last 15, 20 years on Holter. And I think now what we're starting to see is folks dusting off their gear and getting down to those depths with that particular kokanee gear, and they're targeting and successfully finding them.
Okay. What kind of depth do you think are the best depths to try to target those kokanee?
So it's interesting. If you get out there, what you'll see on the lower part of the reservoir is basically the first 30 feet of the water column. There's typically is where all the rainbows are. That's not to say kokanee aren't up in there from time to time, and those are probably the anglers that were periodically picking up a kokanee. But what you start to see now is you'll see a level of fish 30 to 0 feet, and then you'll see a secondary portion of marks that are basically 45 down to 80. And in my opinion, most of those fish that you're seeing there are going to be your kokanee. And then they're not in giant schools. A lot of times you only pick up 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time. But if you get down to those depths and you're at the right speed with the right gear, you're typically going to find them. And also I think, so there's a couple things. You guys probably remember this from the traditional kokanee fishing you've done over the years. The bite is exceptional first thing in the morning. And I don't know what it is about folks, and maybe this will change as the bite gets better and better. But, I'll go out there personally and I won't see a boat on the water until 8 o'clock. And I'm coming off the water at that time. So my recommendation is, first light till 8 o'clock. That's where you need to be out there.
Well, when I recall fishing on Hauser, we used to fish throughout the whole day, but you would see like 50 boats in an area, and you'd be marking a bunch of kokanee. And then nothing's biting. All of a sudden, one net comes up, and somebody nets a kokanee. Next thing you know, you look over, there's another net that came up. Then you look, hey, I got one on. So you're just saying if you're going to really target them, because of the numbers aren't quite there yet like they used to be in Hauser, on Holter, you get out there early and that's when they're going to bite.
Yeah, they're a traditional crepuscular, there I can say it right, decent bite early and late. So, fishing like 4:30 in the morning till like 8 o'clock. And then again in the evening, like your 7 till dark. That's going to be when you're going to want to search for them. And I think traditional gear is still working. There's a lot of new age tackle out there that folks have switched over to. And you could go down a rabbit hole if you get online nowadays. But I think like inline sliders are a new thing that people are trying a lot of the time. They're getting away from your traditional downriggers and stuff. I know that probably pains Dale himself to not use downriggers anymore, but
don't be messing with the downrigger now. And Adam, I just want to clarify something, and maybe I missed it. I was trying to make notes because I want to catch some of these salmon. So you have not been stocking these kokanee in Holter, correct?
Correct. We have not stocked them since 2009 as surplus, and those were not successful.
And do you have plans to stock in the future at all?
Right now, I have a hard time messing with what Mother Nature is doing for us.
Right.
We're not only seeing fish spawning below, let's say, Hauser Dam, but we're seeing them spawning in other areas in the reservoir. We're seeing them at boat ramps in large schools, more of the traditional locations. And then moving, I know we want to focus on Holter, but in Hauser, for example, there's 3 or 4 tributaries where we went to in 2022, and they're making massive spawning migrations into these tributaries. So, they're figuring it out on their own. And with us supplementing on top of them, I really think they'll establish in the next few years.
Yeah. Hey, it's working. Leave it alone.
Yeah.
All right, Adam. Hey, we're going to take a quick break and talk about one of our favorite businesses in Montana, Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Captain, you've been getting lots of folks asking about your dump trailer that you got from Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. What's up with that? Tell us about what you got from them.
Well, you know what I do, Downrigger, is I get them when they ask me about the dump trailer. I usually have a project that I haven't done. I've been putting off. And so I go, well, I'll show you how this works, but you got to go fill it up first. And I said, you
do
go
a little
fill
Tom
it up.
Sawyer on them, yeah.
You go fill it up, and I'll show you how it works. And that's what they do. No, seriously, those dump trailers, you either have a dump truck or you have a dump trailer. Now, a dump trailer is a lot less expensive, a lot more, I shouldn't say more versatile, but it's really comes in handy for a lot of projects, and they come in many different sizes. And the Diamond C trailer, dump trailer, is one of the premier dump trailers in the industry. And Josh at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer has been doing an excellent job of providing those dump trailers for folks throughout Montana and actually beyond. He also does business in Washington and Idaho. He's located in Missoula. And if you go on rmtte.com, you can find out the different sizes and get the contact information for Josh, that family-run business on Expressway in Missoula.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they've got some great equipment trailers. Whether you're hauling around your side-by-side or, lawn tractor or even on up to some of your bigger equipment. I mean, they just really have what you're looking for. That Diamond C is incredible. We've seen a lot of folks really love those CM truck beds, which if that's what you're looking for, go check those out. But the list goes on and on. So I really hope you folks will check it out. Captain's been awful happy with his and also his gooseneck trailer hitch. So again, rmtte.com, or you can see Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. They're at 5680 Expressway in Missoula, or you can call them 406-549-4243. Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. All right, Adam, let's get back to you, and we'll continue our discussion here.
Let me switch a little bit here. Let's get into the trout. Holter has really been known for just a fantastic trout fishery in the spring and the fall. I mean, the really big trout you catch in the fall. You guys have planted trout in there for years. What's it look like in the future here? Because there was a time, because of budgetary reasons or whatever it may be, you actually did not stock as many as that were stocked, say, previous years.
So 2018, 2019, we had budgetary constraints that basically, spread the pain out amongst plants throughout the entire Region 4. And basically, we moved to 50% of normal stocking levels during that time frame. In 2020, we reestablished our long-term goals. Speaking to Holter, that's 250,000 rainbows. And we've been at those levels since. And the one really neat thing that's happened in the last 4 years is we've started doing our wild Eagle Lake egg take at Gates of the Mountains boat ramp. So we basically shock up fish that are right on the boat ramp, and we spawn those fish right near the boat ramp. With the help of Brian Zimmerman and the folks at Gates of the Mountains, they've been very gracious in allowing us space to do our operation there with our management staff, which would be myself, as well as our hatchery staff. And that's primarily been working with Giant Springs and Big Springs hatcheries, and sometimes with Blue Water Hatchery out of Bridger. But we're now taking between 400 and 750,000 eggs annually from those fish right at Gates of the Mountains. And those are the fish that end up going back into the Helena area reservoirs.
Okay. So the trout stocking, is it because of the pressure that Holter gets? Because they can produce, as you mentioned, they can produce on their own, but the pressure that you get from Helena, from Bozeman, from Great Falls, that's got to play into the stress that lake has when it comes to trout fishing.
Yeah, I mean, trout are the bread and butter for Holter. That's what the majority of anglers that come to Holter are trout anglers. Now, there are seasonal variations to that, when walleye are spawning in upper Holter, or when they get into that really good canyon bite, which Captain, you and I have fished together at the mouth of the canyon before. When that's happening, there's still some seasonality to that. And down on the lower end of the reservoir, certainly later in the summer, the walleye bite gets really good. But right now on Holter, it's driven by still remains to be predominantly rainbow anglers, and a lot of that has to do with in the winter time, that's probably the most consistent species. Although recently we've had an incredible perch population in there.
Okay. And how do you see the walleye population in Holter? Is that going up, down, staying pretty consistent? What do you see there?
Yeah, so in recent years, the population of walleye has really stabilized. We're seeing a great size distribution. Lots of fish between 14 and 20 inches. And in fact, this last weekend, when I was out angling with my family, lots of reports of folks going out to catch between 10 and 20 fish in an outing. A lot of that's pitch and jigs to the shore, a little bit of vertical jigging, and some bottom bouncing down on the lower end. But I think overall the walleye population in Holter is in excellent shape, especially since they have a limitless forage base right now. I mean, the perch population is going to be incredible for the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, Adam, we're going to take another quick break. Talk about our friends at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Boy, if you folks are thinking about doing a remodel, or maybe you want to build a new home, I cannot stress enough that you go and see the folks at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Now, you can go online at Superior-Hardwoods and take a look at them there, or you can, obviously go to Missoula and see them. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I just flat don't know where you can find a larger selection. They have the largest selection in the western United States. And I'm talking about everything from your traditional new wood floors and siding or paneling to reclaimed hardwoods. Captain, you've got a reclaimed hardwood floor in your home in Lewistown. That is a gorgeous hardwood floor. I know a lot of people give you some pretty amazing compliments on that.
Yeah, it's a great floor to have. The one that we have, you don't need to take your shoes off. You enter a house, sometimes you got to take your shoes off. Not here, not at our Lewistown place. And you're always looking at the floor. I mean, I look at that floor more than I've ever looked at a floor, and here's why. Because I go, well, there's like a crack in the flooring. Well, I go over there, and it's really not a crack in the flooring. It's the way the flooring was restructured, remanufactured. It's hardwood floors. They have so many different styles of hardwood floors, and it's so easy to do business with Superior Hardwoods because they know the hardwood floor business. I mean, they have a warehouse that's got 10,000 square feet full of exotic and domestic lumber, and they have 100,000 square feet of flooring in that warehouse. 100,000 square feet. So you can find a floor at superior-hardwoods.com.
Yeah, and don't forget their antique reclaimed timbers and beams, too. For those of you doing a full new construction, wow, those things are incredible to look at. Really give you that great rustic look. It's all right there. That is superior-hardwoods.com. Hope you'll go see them soon. You're going to love it. You can also reach them at 406-235-7452 at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Gotta love those folks, and of course we really appreciate them sponsoring this podcast. Now, Adam, let's get back to what we were talking about here, Captain.
So a lot of people forget about this, but Holter is actually the lake that has the state record walleye.
Yeah.
Which is you're really proud of, Adam. You didn't catch it, but that kind of says something about that lake. I mean, you got Kokanee salmon, you got trout, you have perch, and then you have the state record walleye. Now, I have noticed in the past that the walleye have been tougher for me to catch at Holter than they are, for example, in Canyon Ferry. Why is that? Because I don't know what I'm doing on Holter?
Well,
that could be.
Yeah. So what I think's going on there is, and this is the old analogy of when it rains, it pours. Like you said, it's just great for all species right now. Honestly, Holter is in its heyday for nearly every species, and unfortunately for walleye anglers, and this has always been a trick, catch rates have never been great for walleye anglers, the general angling public on Holter. And we in large part think that that's because there's traditionally some semblance of a forage base. And now when basically you have a exceptional age class of perch, why would you chase that shiny thing that Mark's trolling behind his boat when you got the real thing just swimming in your mouth? So,
yeah,
right.
Mm-hmm. So that may be, and correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think anglers are going to adjust their presentation, adjust what they do? Do you think we as anglers will get it figured out and be able to emulate that to where, maybe they can't tell the difference and they will have better luck? Or is it always going to be a little tougher to get them?
Yeah, I think the bite there is just a little tougher. A lot of the locals that fish it daily in the spring, they've got it very well figured out. They've got spots they target, and they've got specific baits or tactics they use. And I just always think it's going to be a trick to, other than seasonally, when they're kind of stacked in that upper part of the reservoir. I think it's always going to be a struggle. Plus, Holter is a super long reservoir. It's hard to access a lot of it. I mean, you really have to want to get to a location, especially if it's a good bite. I mean, you're talking, you're running 20, 30 minutes to locations. I know if that's Fort Peck, that's a short run, but around here, you're asking somebody to run 20, 25 minutes on Holter. That's a pretty good run. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For example, they might be biting at Gates of the Mountains. Maybe they might be biting across from the boat launch over there at the lower end of the Holter. Yeah, so you never know where those walleyes are going to bite. But I will tell you this. I believe that Trevor Johnson, who holds that state record, he was actually fishing for trout in an area that is noted as Land of the Giants. Explain that to the folks out there that haven't heard about Land of the Giants in Holter.
Yeah, so Land of the Giants is a place that a lot of folks refer to, and that's the spot from Hauser Dam to basically where the river transitions into the reservoir. And that location is notorious for growing giant trout, whether it be rainbows or browns, or giant walleye. And what's interesting about that part is there's a unique wild component. There's also like the hatchery component, and then there's the natural like spawning walleye component to the whole entire fishery. And then you start adding in things like occasionally you'll run into a brown trout pushing 20 pounds. It tends to draw a lot of angling pressure. For example, I was going to mention this. Up until COVID in 2020, that stretch of the river historically had about 45,000 angler days. And an angler day is if you fish for 1/2 hour during a day, that's an angler day. Most trips are around 4 hours. In 2020, the year of COVID, we did a survey that year, and that number jumped up to 75,000. And some perspective there is that's a 4-mile stretch of river. When you hear the angling days numbers like below Holter, you're talking an area approximately 20 miles long. Yes, they're 175,000 angler days, but number of anglers per mile per square inch, frankly, is significantly higher. And what's unique is that fishery just keeps producing large fish, lots of them, year after year. And you're seeing that with the walleye state record. You're seeing that with anglers consistently reporting rainbows over 10 pounds. You're seeing rainbow numbers over 4,000 per mile. It's just a pretty incredible fishery. And that's why it's fondly referred to as Land of the Giants.
Okay.
So, Adam, is it recommended by you to catch and release some of those big trout and, say a bigger walleye in that system right now? Or, I mean, what do those guys do? They don't keep those big trout, do they? Or do they?
My recommendation is to follow the regulations. And we have those regulations in place to allow for some harvest. There's some protection. There's different parameters for trout in the lake versus the river upstream. What we do see that is interesting, and this comes in our creel survey. So we're out there at least one day, a lot of days, a lot of weeks, 3 days a week. We're talking to anglers who are fishing in that Land of the Giants area. And we're seeing close to 90% catch and release for rainbow trout, and even as high as 60% for walleye. And of course, it's mandatory catch and release for browns in that area.
Right. Now, that brings the next question. How important is a creel survey to FWP? I see them over to Fort Peck, and of course, you're saying you're doing on Holter and Hauser and Canyon Ferry. How important? How does that, tabulate into what you guys do with your management?
Yeah, that's a super crucial component of what we do. It's actually in our management plan to survey anglers throughout the entire Upper Missouri River Reservoir system. And we have been doing those surveys since 1986. So we have our fingers on the pulse of who's catching what, when, where, and how. And we plug that information into the particular management decisions we need to make. So for instance, when we make a regulation change, let's say on walleye, we'll be able to pick up on is the regulation working, and does the data that we collect in the field using netting surveys match up with what anglers are seeing?
So you got Holter Reservoir, you have Canyon Ferry Reservoir. Canyon Ferry, I would say, is probably noted for their walleye. They had the Walleye Festival just recently. Holter is noted for the trout, as you mentioned earlier. Now, obviously, they have other species. Where does Hauser fit into this mix?
So Hauser's always the one that's the toughest one to pin down. Everything that happens in Canyon Ferry, whether it be flushing flows or incredible populations of walleye, for example, if those get flushed into Hauser, those change the game. The biggest struggle in Hauser in recent years has been reestablishing kokanee and growing walleye to preferred sizes. We've got a lot of fish walleye related in that age class, I'd say 15 and under. But what we've seen, which is interesting, in the last couple of years is a population of yellow perch that have really kind of taken off, third on record as far as abundance goes. And we're starting to see yellow perch in walleye bellies, and we're starting to hear from anglers that are targeting and catching perch again. So I think it's twofold in the sense where we're going to see some growth on walleye and reestablish, one of those causeway arm perch bites. And one place that's often overlooked, and it's still part of the system, is Lake Helena, which is just on the other side of the causeway. It's all part of the same reservoir. In the last few years, there's been some incredible perch fishing experiences in that body of water because that's where they go, to that shallow, turbid water for spawning.
There are some different perch daily limit and possession limits on each one of these lakes. Are you savvy enough, and do you have it at the top of your brain, and I know it's a big brain, to tell us what they are? Canyon Ferry, Hauser, and Holter?
Canyon Ferry, Hauser, and Holter for which species?
For perch.
So Canyon Ferry is 10 daily and in possession. Hauser is 10 daily and in possession, only 1 over 14 inches, basically in the spring. And so that's those two reservoirs. And then Holter, we just made a regulation change on yellow perch from 25 daily and in possession to 25 daily, 50 in possession.
And for those of you listening to the podcast, I'll put a link to those regulations down there at the bottom. So if you guys want to review those, you can. Go ahead, Captain. One last question, then we got to roll.
Well, I just wanted to, it's really not a question, but it's a compliment. I've known Adam for a lot of years, and he's got his hands full in a responsibility basis when it comes to those reservoirs. They get a lot of fishing pressure. They're very diverse reservoirs. And one of the things I've always appreciated about Adam is that when I do go fishing with him, I usually can outfish him. No, one of the things I've really been impressed with Adam is his passion for those reservoirs. He's out there fishing them. He cares about them. And I think Montana should be very, very happy we have somebody like Adam Strainer helping manage the fish population in all three of those Helena reservoirs.
I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. I'm an East Helena kid, born and raised in this area, and it means a lot to me to spend all this time and put forth effort to keep it in good hands. And I like to think that I try to do my best, and I appreciate having conversations like this with you folks, to kind of get that information out and share our knowledge and share our passion for the resource.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for spending so much time with us here and talking about Holter and Hauser and the surrounding areas. I hope we can have you back again and talk some more about this, because we're learning a lot. And folks, I'm going to put your Adam's contact information in the links below, and you can be able to give him some of your thoughts in that, because I know you always like that. So, Adam, we'll let you go. I know you got lots to do, and just keep managing those reservoirs the way you're doing, because it's pretty awesome out there.
Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, you take care. There you have it, folks. Got some great information from Adam Strainer. Again, those links will be down there, and you can get more information and all that. And until then, just get out there and have some fun. See if you can get some of those kokanee on Holter. We'll see you soon here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock, high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.